Good evening, namaste, or adab. Welcome to our Meet the Author session. And in today's session, we are going to talk about a book which is based on Vyasa's Mahabharata, the famous epic narrative. So, this book that we are going to talk about is named Completing Vyasa's Mahabharata 67 Upakathas for the Modern Reader. And it is written by Mr. Abhinav Agarwal. Through this book, Abhinav Agarwal is trying to retell the 67 Upakhyaanas from the critical edition. He is also the author of fiction thriller Predators and Prey. In 2018, he edited and self published his daughter's book, A Year with the Maha Puranas. He is the technical editor of an Oracle Press McGraw Hill book. He is also the curator of Indica Books. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering from Mumbai University and is a gold medalist from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore's postgraduate program in enterprise management. He lives in Bangalore with his wife and two children. So it's time to meet Mr. Abhinav Agarwal. Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Shweta. Happy to be on Story Scrapers.
It's our pleasure, sir, completely our pleasure that you have honored our platform today. Thank you so much for giving us your time, sir.
Not at all. My pleasure to be on.
So, sir, let's start with the conversation. And there's a very basic question that I ask each and every author because it's very important for us to know about their writing journey also. What motivated them, how it started, and how it has been throughout. So, what have been the ups and downs of your writing journey?
Fascinating question. I set about writing my first book. I had written a lot of blog posts and book reviews, more than 200 of them and counting. And about in 2017 or thereabouts, I started writing my first book, and it was a fiction thriller. Now, the interesting thing is that I had wanted to always write a book on the Mahabharata, but when I sat down to write a book, even though I had like more than 50 articles on the Mahabharata that I had already written and had been published either as blog posts or on online portals or magazines and all, I still couldn't figure out what exactly to write about on the Mahabharata. Something that I thought I could add value to, something that I thought would be unique and all. Frankly, I couldn't think about it. So I said, ki, theek hai, we'll come back to the Mahabharata at a later point. So then I wrote this fiction thriller, Predators and Prey. Now in 2022, I think last year, sometime last year or thereabouts, I finally struck upon, what I wanted to write about. And that was on the Upakhyaanas of the Mahabharata. The
Right.
Upakathas, the Upakhyaanas of the Mahabharata. And that's what I ended up writing.
Great, great. That's nice. And as this word is there in your title as well, Upakhyans, Upakathas. So we really want to know what exactly do they mean, because many of us are not aware of all these things. So please do tell us about that as well.
Right. So everyone has heard of the story of Savitri. I think everyone knows about Nal Damayanti and Kach Devyani and Yayati and Shakuntala and Amba. Everyone knows about these stories. We have read them in the Mahabharata, or in the Amar Chitra Katha and all. So these are essentially a part of the Mahabharata itself.
Right.
And these are, as one would also say, that they are not part of the main narrative of the Mahabharata, but they are upkathas. They are subtales of the Mahabharata.
Okay.
So that is one. Now let us look at the second step. That these are not the only upkathas in the Mahabharata. There are, according to some enumeration, there are more than 500 such subtales in the Mahabharata.
Right.
So why 67? I mean, why did I choose 67? And the good news is that I didn't choose the 67.
They chose you.
नहीं, उतना भी esoteric नहीं है. So there was a scholar who sadly passed away in February earlier this year by the name of Al Heitbeitel, and he was associated with Motilal Banarsi Das for several decades, and for at least 50 years he has been writing and researching on the Mahabharata, one of the foremost scholars of the Mahabharata. So he had written several years back an article, a paper on the subtales of the Mahabharata, and he identified 67, that he said, why this number 67? He said, let's look at the critical edition of the Mahabharata itself and say that, okay, in the title, it's called an Upakhyan. In the Parv Sangrah, Parv, it's called an Upakhyan. Or somewhere in the Mahabharata itself, it is described as an Upakhyan. So let us, stick with this very, very precise definition. Based on that, he came up with this list of 67 Upakhyans or the Upakathas.
Okay.
So then I said, "ठीक है, let's pick these, because otherwise it becomes a very subjective exercise that I will pick those that I like, and I will probably want to leave those out that I think are not as interesting, exciting." I said, let's look at these 67 Upakathas, and has anyone retold them in English? Because translations exist. There's a Sri Vivek Dabroy's translation, which is an unabridged shloka by shloka, verse by verse translation that actually I have used as my primary source. But Gita Press has a translation. Writers Workshop has a transcreation. Ramesh Menon has done one. There's this, Ganguly's translation from more than 100 years back, more than 120 years back. But for the lay reader, modern reader, urban reader, who probably is not going to be reading the unabridged one, is there an English retelling done? And as best as I could figure out, no one had done that before. So I said, "ठीक है, this is my spot where I think I can actually add value." So I went about writing that.
Right, right. So, your interest is in mythology. Was it there like years back also, or it started, or it became more you can say intense with while doing this work?
Both. So first of all, there is the Amar Chitra Kathas that a lot of us grew up reading, and the Amar Chitra Kathas, apart from talking about history and political leaders and gods, they also had a very, very rich collection of comics on Itihasa and Puran.
Right.
So the Itihasas become Ramayana and Mahabharata. The Purans are obviously, the Bhagavad, the Shiv, the Matsya Puran, Brahma Puran, and all the major Purans. So the interest in the Mahabharata was there. Then, if you recall, in the 1980s, there were these two mega serials that came out: Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana and B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata. And I think when Mahabharata used to be telecast on Doordarshan, streets would empty on Sunday
Yeah,
mornings.
absolutely.
So that also sparked a greater interest in the Mahabharata. And then over the years, I did a lot of reading on the Mahabharata. So this book was essentially a culmination of all the interest and the reading that I had done on the Mahabharata. And obviously, when writing this book, I had to go back to the original unabridged translation and do a lot of my own, verification, cross-checking. So I think it deepened my interest further in the text.
Right, right, sir. That's nice. And I really want to know, like, when somebody is writing about mythology, there are so many things that you yourself come to know. So, while going through that journey, what do you feel that how significant it is for each and every person to know about the mythology, to go into deep?
Uh,
Yeah.
Correct. One clarification: I don't call it mythology. It is Itihasa and Puran for me.
Right, right.
Mythology is more of a Western construct that is meant to tell us that our stories are not stories; they are mithya.
Mithya.
I don't consider them
True.
mithya, but then again, to each their own. See, one of the things that happens is जब आप say अमर चित्र कथा पढ़ रहे हैं, when you're reading an abridged retelling, when you're reading a dramatic fictionalized retelling, you lose something in the process. Because if you're talking about a comic book, it is, Amar Chitra Katha is 32 pages long. So obviously you have to do a lot of cutting, editing, chopping, simplification of it.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that is done with a very valid purpose, that you have to fit a story and make it interesting in 32 pages. So when retelling these stories, I wanted to see if I could strike a balance, because you put in a lot of facts and things and it makes a story sort of dry for the modern reader. Because if you look at the modern reader who's used to reading fiction thrillers, for example, the unabridged Mahabharat may be a little slow for them. So how can you compress it so that and retell it so that it is interesting, exciting to the modern reader,
Yes.
but you don't end up distorting things either? And it happens quite a lot these days, unfortunately, that writers will end up adding their own masala to the story and distorting this the story, introducing myths or perpetuating myths that have been floating around for on the Mahabharata for years.
Right, right. So, like when you came across and when you read all these upakhyans, so what did you feel about it? That, what was there in it that you thought that it has to be retold to everyone? That what was the, that what are we all missing about all these things? We are just, have a very broader kind of knowledge and awareness of all these kahanis and itihas and all these things. We have a very broader knowledge of it,
Correct.
but we don't know the in-depth things that happened and how they happened,
So
what led to those particular incidences or situations that we are just not aware of it.
that's a very good question, because first of all, there is this misconceptions that we have, and we think like because this is what we have read and this is what everyone has told us, this has to be the way, the truth.
Yeah,
So one
exactly.
is that. The second is that these subtales are not separate parts. Like you can remove them from the Mahabharata and the Mahabharata is still complete. I came to the conclusion that these subtales, these Upakathas, are an integral part of the Mahabharata. So, which is why the title of the book, Completing Vyasa's Mahabharata, because I strongly believe that these subtales, in essence, complete the Mahabharata. So, when Vyasa wrote the Mahabharata, when he composed it over a period of 3 years, these subtales complete the Mahabharata. He didn't intend them to be, a separate or a distinct part from the text. The third one is that rereading them, one of the very unmistakable messages that I got was that the women, as portrayed in the epic, in the Mahabharata, are incredibly strong-willed women of their own independent minds and thinking and free will, which is
Right.
somewhat of a surprise from what we read, that वो rare है कि वो घिसे पिटे words that are used to describe that, patriarchy and misogyny and patriarchy and misogyny, and unless and until you write women to be subdued and wo, the it is not the Mahabharata. And when I read the original, I said, oh my God, they are more liberated and free than women that you find
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in
And
modern
more
society today.
respected, and more respected also, because I was going through the chapter 3, Mahabhisha. So when I was reading that chapter, how and what happened in that particular situation with Ganga, like how much of respect was supposed to be given to her, and how the whole scenario was created, that was that actually took me aback, that how much respect was given to women at that time. And I wanted to come to this chapter and wanted to ask you also that the chapters says about Mahabhisha, long lived the curse. We have always thought that it was not a curse, it was a blessing, that nobody could, kill Mahabhisha, nobody, he had a very long life, but it was actually a curse which he has got. So I want you to elaborate a little about that chapter as well.
See, this is such a fascinating tale, because it highlights a very important message of the Mahabharata itself, that dharma is subtle,
Yes.
sukshma. Bhishma says that, Yudhishthir says that, Krishna says that, even Dhritarashtra says that dharma is subtle. And this story is a wonderful illustration of that, because, as you said, that Mahabhish was cursed to be born on earth. And so then he's born as Shantanu. And then Ganga is walking back dejected and all, and then she comes across the Vasus, and the Vasu tell her that she asks them ki, like, itna muh kyun latkaya hua hai? And they say that we have been cursed to be born on
Good.
earth, kyunki we ended up stealing the sage's cow, Sage Vashishta's cow.
Right.
So then she says, then they request her ki, then can you become our mother on earth? And the moment we are born, free us from the curse, because the curse didn't say ki, like, how long you have to live on
How long?
earth. It just said that you have to be born
Absolutely.
in Mrityulok. The moment we are born, free us from this curse. And she says, fine, I will do that. Now comes the interesting part, two parts to this. Now Ganga says ki, like, I want that my presence on earth should not go, asafal, in vain, so that I want at least one son to live long. Now, this is one
Right.
part of the story. The
Yeah.
second part is that Vashishta also says that, ठीक है, the 8 vasus has सात, 7 of you will be freed very soon from the curse if you so want. But the 8th one, because he is most responsible for the theft, he will be cursed to live a long life. Now, look at how beautifully these two
Right.
things come together. Ganga wants one of her sons to live long. One of those sons has been cursed to live long.
Yes.
And that happens to be Devavrat, who becomes Bhishma.
Please.
So it is, I mean, this man was literally living a cursed life on earth. And if you look at it, what can be, I mean, he is a man who has the boon, who gets from his father that you can choose a moment of your death. Shantanu tells him that, Ichha Mrityu ka vardhan deta hu, and the poor man can't choose his moment of
Yeah.
death till 56, 57 days after the war. He's lying literally on a bed of arrows, which is such a beautiful metaphorical illustration of his life on earth, to literally spend his life on a bed of arrows.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we are so unaware of so many integrities which are there in the stories in our itihas. We are just not aware of all these things, that how did it all happen? So I think this is a very beautiful way of telling each one of us that this is our itihas, this is what happened, and this is what we need to know, because it is not just a story. There are so many other messages also, like you have told us about the message of respecting women, that so much of respect were given to women. They were so liberated at that time. And we are just not aware of those things. हम यही सोचते हैं कि आज का ही ज़माना सब अच्छा है, when we are, working towards feminism and doing this and that. It was there in that state, in that era also, but in a different form, in a different sense. It was also happening there in that era.
Correct, correct. Here is Shakuntala, who decides who she wants to marry. There is Savitri, who decides who she wants to marry.
Yeah,
There is Damayanti, who the gods tell her, you will have to marry one of us. And yet, she rejects the gods and she chooses to marry Nal. There is Gandhari, who literally curses God, Krishna, after
right.
the Kurukshetra war, and says 36 years from now, you and your entire clan will be destroyed. And Krishna says, yes, I know, and your curse cannot come false. Then there is, yeah. So then there is Savitri, again, who not only chooses who she wants to marry, she says no to Narad, she says no to her father Ashwapati. And yet, 1 year after marriage, when Satyavan dies, she literally walks with Yam, not just a Yamdut, she walks with Yamraj. And she
Oh,
brings back her husband. I mean, I can't think of a braver woman than that.
absolutely.
Because all things
That's,
said and done, when you're walking with Yamraj, you're literally taking a very risky gamble.
yeah,
And she walks with him and she forces him, essentially. She just, I mean, she is not only resourceful, but she's also knowledgeable enough that she's speaking things that Yamraj finds beneficial, helpful, soothing, calming, and he keeps giving her boon after boon. And every time he gives her a boon, he says that ask for anything except your husband's life. And yet she keeps persisting. And on the
Yeah.
fifth boon, he basically says, ask for anything. And she says, I just want one thing, my husband's life.
Wow, that's so beautiful and so powerful as well, that she stuck to what her decision was, and she just didn't budge from that. So that is really nice, so powerful, such a powerful message. So any particular passage also, sir, that you would read for us? I really want you to read from any of the stories, any one passage or few lines.
Actually, uh, now that we're talking about, maybe I'll read something from Savitri itself. We were talking about women,
Please, yeah,
and this
do.
is let me see. This is, so by the way, this is the book, and here there is there is so this is the point where, see, what happens is that Savitri grows up and she is very, very beautiful and everything, and no king or prince in the land can summon up the courage to ask her hand in marriage. And her father Ashwapati finally says that, he doesn't say that, I will select a groom for you. He tells her that you go out and you find someone who you think is worthy of you, and I will marry you to him. And she
Right.
goes out and she spots Satyavan, and she finds out about Satyavan, and she comes back and she tells her father that she has decided to marry Satyavan. That is her choice. And at that very point, sage Narad Rishi is also visiting Ashwapati. So when Narad hears about it, he is basically says, your daughter has not made a good choice. And
Okay.
Ashwapati is very surprised. He's like concerned. He's asking Narad Muni, why? So he asks her, like, is he not truthful, etc., etc. He says, is he not handsome? Is he deformed or hideous? He's handsome like the Ashwin twins, Narad replies. Then what is his vice, O sage? Please enlighten me. You didn't look pleased when Savitri revealed her choice. Ashwapati pleaded with Narad. He has no vices save one, O king. But your daughter has still erred in choosing Satyavan as her husband. Why do you not approve of this union? He has one vice, just one. What is it? He's destined to die 1 year from now. Ashwapati stood up. Savitri stood rooted. He looked at his daughter, O child, not him, anyone but him. You cannot marry Satyavan. You must not marry someone who will leave you a widow in just a year. Ashwapati pleaded with his daughter. Once, O father, just once, Satyavati said. Ashwapati looked up. He looked on nonplussed. Narad looked at Satyavati and knew she had made up her mind. Not even the gods could change her mind now. Just once, father, just as a die is cast only once, just as the daughter is given away in marriage only once, just as the father gives away the daughter only once, so will I choose a husband only once. I have made my choice, Satyavati said.
Such a strong statement it is. Wow, that's lovely. That's nice.
It is, isn't it? It's fascinating.
Yeah, really nice. And I have read a few stories also from your book, sir. The way you have written, it looks like, it's very engaging, especially for the 21st century readers. You have converted it into a, thriller kind of you can say narrative, where they are glued to it. They are just not leaving any line unread. So that interest is there, that, okay, what is going to happen next? What is going to happen next? I'm sure there are other key elements also which you have, put there in the book so that it becomes a good read. And it is indeed a good read. So I really want to know about those key elements also.
So, well, first of all, yes, thank you. That was the intent, to make it read like a thriller, where, because see, the Mahabharata is, you say the Mahabharata is a Panchved, it is Itihasa, it is a Dharma Shastra, Niti Shastra, Arth Shastra. The Mahabharata itself describes it as all of these things and much more. But people sometimes also forget that the Mahabharata is perhaps the greatest story and the greatest thriller that is also has ever been told. Just the Lakshagraha episode and the sequence of events and the plotting and the scheming and that happens, I think no thriller comes close to it. So I wanted to bring that part also out when retelling the story to make it like a page turner. The second is that, okay, I said retell the 67 Upakhyaanas in a fast paced manner, uh, stick true and stay true to the Mahabharata. What else? So, a couple of things. One is that in certain cases, I have put in some footnotes to, you know, elaborate certain things or to do, for lack of a better word, fact check. If someone wants to fact check that, did this really happen? Then I've put in a footnote that, okay, in the Mahabharata, in this parva, this chapter, this shloka, this is what it actually says. And there are about more than 300 actual translations from the Mahabharata that I have included in it. Uh, One example of such an instance is uh, where Draupadi's Swamvar is taking place, and we are told that when Karn got up to string the bow and shoot at the target, Draupadi stops him by saying that you are not a Kshatriya, you are a Sut Putra, so therefore I will not marry you, you cannot do that. That's what we have been told. If you read the Mahabharata, it says Karn got up and he tried to shoot, but he failed. He failed in the test. Nowhere does it say that the Draupadi stood up and stopped him.
Okay.
So the question will be ki like, acha, ye to ye Abhinav is making up his own story. This is not the fact. So I have put in a footnote there. Go to this parv, go to the go to the Adi parv, and in the Draupadi Swamvar Upaparv, here is the chapter, here is the verse. You can check it for yourself. Or the fact that when on the eve of the war, Indradev comes as a Brahman to take away Karn's Kavach and Kundal because he knows that as long as Karn wears the Kavach and Kundal, he cannot be killed and the war is coming. And my, earthly son Arjun is going to fight Karn, and I fear for Arjun's life. And Surya warns Karn that Indradev is coming, so be warned. And when Indradev comes in the form of a Brahman, and the Brahman says Bhiksham Dehi, and Karn says, ask. And he says, give me your Kavach and Kundal. And, Karn just cuts it and gives it to the Brahman. That is not what happens. What happens is that Karn refuses. Okay. Karn says, I'm not going to give these to you, because if I give them, I will be vulnerable. I can be killed. And no Kshatriya will do that. So he refuses.
Right.
And then when the Brahman persists, Karn says, I will give them to you, but only as an exchange. You give me your Shakti and I will give you my Kavach and Kundal. So he still gives it, but there's a nuance there that he Danveer Karn just doesn't give it, without any questions or second thoughts. He does a trade.
Right.
So
there the footnotes are coming there to help
there
us.
the footnotes come in.
Okay. Anything else? Any other particular thing which you have included there?
Let me actually, good question. I haven't gone to the footnotes in a long time. But for example, let us see. Let us see. Okay. So, for example, when the Pandavas' Agyatwas is coming to an end, so they spent 12 years in the forest, and then they're supposed to spend 1 year in Agyatwas, which basically meant two things: that they had to live in an inhabited place. They couldn't just live in the jungle. They had to go to a town or a village, and they had to live there, and they had to live without getting recognized, because if they did, they would have to go back to exile for 12 plus 1, 13 years. So before they went, they ended up going to Virat to spend the 13th year. That much we know. But
Right.
It's not as if they simply just selected Virat at random. They, in the fourth parv, it says that the kingdoms that the Pandavas had considered, I write, were Chedi, Dasharna, Malla, Matsya, Panchal, Shalva, Shurasen, Yugandhar, and other kingdoms had actually shortlisted and then evaluated them and rejected them for various reasons, and they finally decided to go to the Matsya kingdom. So
Okay.
like this, there are small footnotes which I thought that it's not really relevant to put it in the main body of the text. But I think if someone is interested, let's put it as a footnote. So maybe when they so feel, they can go to the footnotes and take a look at those.
That's wonderful. And it's such a, the way you are narrating all these small, small incidents. I really don't want this conversation to end at any point. I want to know so many other things also. You know, so many interesting and fascinating things are there in the book. So, was there any, challenging thing also that you have come across that, you found that it was really difficult to, overcome, or it took a little time and energy of yours? So, was there anything challenging that ways?
Uh, I think the Mahabharata is such that it is anytime you pick it up and read it, or it is an enjoyable experience. But I think one of the things was to make it well. I think two things that I kind of had to spend a little bit of time on. One was to make the style of the writing consistent. It shouldn't
Right.
be that one chapter reads in a particular way and the second chapter is very different in the way it feels, it reads, it's slow, it is, and all of that. And the second one was the getting the names consistent and right, in the sense that
Yes.
if you look at, say, Bhangashvan or Kamalashpad, the spellings are somewhat difficult to get right. Because why? Because if I use diacritic marks and other things, then I think it makes where you put the dots and the other things, I think it kind of takes away from the fluidity, the smoothness of the reading. But on the other hand, if I don't write them properly, then it is very likely that someone will read it as a kalmashpad, which is wrong. So I had to struggle a little bit with that. Uh, so that was one.
That's great. That was quite a task that you have done. So, oh, how much time did it take to complete this book?
Ah, uh, so the first draft was done by, I think, by June last year, 2022,
Okay.
and then I got some feedback. I sent it to a couple of people, and they sent back feedback. And then I started a whole round of editing, and that took me till uh, January this year. And
Fine.
then I sent it to the publisher, and the publisher said that this is good. Send us the final draft. So then I spent
Okay.
another 2 months in doing the final round of editing. So basically, it took a little over a year to write it. I would say, yeah, about 12 to 15 months.
Okay. Wonderful. And should we expect that the next, the work of yours will also be based on the same lines, or it will be something different?
I honestly don't know, because I have a couple of books that I'm working on. One is a sequel to Predators and Prey, which has been, I mean, I've been writing it for like the longest time. I've still not finished it, but I think, I hope, I wish, I pray I finish it. The other one is, yes, something along the same lines as the Mahabharata, maybe, with a Puran, I want to try my hands at. And I haven't decided yet which Puran it will be, but I'll pick one. There are so many fascinating stories, whether it is the Bhagavad Puran, the Brahma Puran, the Markandeya, Vishnu, Shiv Puran, and all. There are fascinating stories there. Maybe I'll pick one of those next.
That's lovely. And we are eagerly waiting for your next book as well. So, any piece of advice that you would like to share with our writers or anyone who wants to write in this particular genre?
Uh, I think if you're planning to write on our epics, on Itihasa, on Purana, on the Mahabharata and all, I think it's a wonderful thing. There is so much of learning and stories and entertainment and, uh, uh, you know, that can be brought forward and forth in a new way and present it in a new way to our new generation. So that's very good. Just keep in mind two things. First of all, don't fall to the temptation of distorting things. And there are some very successful writers who have done a very commercially successful but a very adharmic job of distorting epics, and they seem to be proud of it. Don't do that. My humble, sincere request to you. And the second is, when you're doing that, think how you can make it new and different. Because it is not as if you are the first person who's going to be telling a story on the Mahabharata. I mean, thousands of people have done that before. What is it that you are going to be bringing new to the table?
Right, absolutely. So bringing something new without, twisting or changing the old things. So that is also that is important.
I think so. I think so. I mean, uh,
Absolutely.
you know,
I agree to that.
for the sake of shock value, you can distort and do other things, but I don't think that is the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sir, with such a wonderful message for the audience, we end up this conversation. And I really wish that you come up with more such, fascinating books which will increase our knowledge, make us aware of our itihas, and make us more, make us awakened in a lot of other senses as well. So thank you so much, Abhinav sir, for sharing your experiences, telling us about your wonderful book, and we'll surely share the link, Amazon link of the book also with our audience. Thank you so much, Abhinav sir, for giving us your time, and thanks to our audience for watching our show. We'll
Thank you,
meet you
Shweta,
soon.
for calling me to your show, and thank you for a very wonderful set of questions and discussion.
Thank you, sir. Our pleasure completely. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Take care. Stay smiling, stay happy, and take care of yourself.